So, well, continuing that, as we have, this is the topic application of microeconomics. So, in the last session, we have already discussed the definition, what the basic definition is there, right? As the definition suggests production, distribution, consumption of forest product and services. Here we are specifying this thing: forest product and services. Right, if for the general economics, this could be goods and services. But here, since we are studying in this for resource economics, management part is there. So that's why we are specifying this product, forest, product and services that has already explained to you. I have already explained to you this technical information related to the forest resource, what the basic technical relation it has. All the necessary information related to that has been already explained to you. And then I have this is methodology, where certain models has to be discussed over different kind of models that is available there to discuss the for resource economics. Right now, we will try to understand this scope and importance. Right, what is the scope and importance? So first, we need to understand the meaning of scope. Right, what the meaning of scope is? The application part or the on the field how we can use the concept that has to be studied, isn't it? Since the topic is application of microeconomics, it means we have to understand that kind of up to how we can apply the microeconomic principles to resolve the problem that has there in forest resource. So scope in application part and extent. It means up to what degree we are able to resolve the issues. That is scope. Listen carefully again. Scope means the application of all this theory and practices, all the knowledge you have, and up to what extent you can use your knowledge or you can use the concept of subject to resolve the issue that you are supposed to face there, right? So you can easily here understand the application of microeconomic principles, right, to forestry, managerial and decision making problems. So here we need to understand that since we are just confining our things as per the syllabus, we are discussing only the microeconomic principle. So the application part and extent of application of microeconomic principles um, to make as a tool for decision making and for the forest management part also there, right? So these things we need to understand. So first we need to understand the scope part and importance, so that you can know this is the scope. See, this scope I told you the area of application. So it means area here is the certain problem the forest resource have. You can say that, right? These are the certain kind of problems that we are facing in the forest resource where decision making is required. Fine. And as I told you in the previous session, the forest has a multiple use, so decision making has become a bit difficult, right? So these are some of the problem, or you can say the area of application where the concept can be used or can be implemented to first understand the problem and then to resolve that issue. It means at least try to get certain degree of solution, right? I can't say this 100% solution, but certain decision making tools will get, right, to resolve the issue with certain extent. So one by one, I'll try to explain you everything, and you all of you listen carefully, and also if you have any question in between, you can ask. So first the things, allotment of forest land, right? So this is one of the basic problem the forest resource has, allotment of forest land. Since as I told you, forest has a multiple use. So if the land that has been occupied by the forest, so we can use that land for the various purpose, right? You have a forest, you can make them protection forest, you can make them production forest, we can make them commercial forest, we can protect the forest for environmental amelioration, we can turn the forest into social forest, isn't it? So there are multiple choice we have, and among the multiple choice we have to select one choice as per the objective, right? So how we can allot the forest land, or how the allocation has been made for the forest land among the different aspect or the different option we have, right? So this is one of the major problem you can say that in the forest resource. So this is the area where we can use the concept of microeconomics that will be later on discussed, that can be applicable here. Allotment of forest land. Have you get that? All of you understanding this first part? Okay. Now, after the second thing is selection of suitable tree crops. Again, there is one of the issues: what kind of tree crop, what kind of species need to be selected. So, whenever the selection of species will be there, this depend upon this allotment of forest land. Right? This is important. The things is in a sequence that one need to understand there. Okay, whenever we are selecting any tree species, so we have to go for the allotment of forest. What kind of allotment, what kind of allocation is there? Right? Just for example, if it is protection forest, right, it means we have to have that kind of species which can solve our soil erosion problem, which can regulate the water supply, which can have a certain which can regulate the micro environment of that particular area, isn't it? So selection of suitable tree crops totally based upon the allotment of forest, right? These things we need to understand here. So as per the allotment is there, we need to select the tree crop. Fine. And on the and you can add some more things that in whenever you are selecting all these tree crops, sometimes you have to we have to understand the local conditions. What kind of local habitation is there? Whether the tribals are available there or not, whether it is any kind of villages, because the livelihood of all this kind of gentry is totally dependent upon the forest. So when you are selecting this species, all these kind of condition need to be studied first, and then you can decide that, right? Then you have a employment potential. Another issue we have employment potential, right? So by understanding this first resource economics, right, at least we can assess. We can't say the 100% what the things result, but we can access at certain extent, right? To the extent of employment. Okay, how much employment, what kind of employment, how many employment can be generated through the forest resource, that need to be understood, right? It means if you have allotment of forest, there's selection of tree crops is there. So obviously, if these two activity will be there, so you can't do these two activity without the human resource. So you need human resource. Now the question is like how, what kind of human resource required? Skilled, non-skilled, isn't it? Number of human labors, how many human number of human resources required there, when you required there. So these are certain issues also that need to be understood, that need to be resolved. Then you have utilization of forest product, that is important. Utilization of forest product, it means the forest product include everything, major and minor forest product, isn't it? So their utilization means degree of usefulness, right? That is need to be understand here. And again one thing, since product has a multiple use, so degree of usefulness totally depend upon the multifacet of that particular product. So you can easily understand the concept, what kind of conflict is going on everywhere, that need to be resolved. So, so that's why the concept of first economics, and when we're supposed to study in detail, that will provide you certain tools to make certain kind of decision making. Then stress on plantation activity, that is very much important there, because we have to have generate this employment potential and forest product if you required, right? So plantation activity need to be enhanced, isn't it? Because more and more stress on plantation activity require more and more labor intensive work, right? So if human resource is required, then there is a possibility, right, there is a possibility to generate employment opportunity there. So stress is required. Then value addition in forest product. Another important value addition. First you need to understand value addition. See, value addition means both quality and quantity. That's required. Value addition means that it means you are adding some extra features for available product. Whatever with the resource we have, we are just adding some extra features. Let me give you some example. For example, you have a forest which is not well managed. Now we are managing that forest to make it beautiful. We are adding some more species. We are adding some certain kind of scenic view. We are adding certain kind of infrastructure there. So what will happen? Right? It will quantitatively the value of forest will be more, right? And on the basis of that, you are able to generate more and more revenue also there. So that is value addition. It means you are adding something, right, to raise the value. So what kind of addition doing? You have both quantitative and qualitative. Okay, let me give another example to understand it very clear. We have a piece of wood, simple piece of wood. So it has certain price. Now we are doing some craft work on that same piece of wood. What will happen? The price will be more because you are just enhancing the quality. You are making the same piece of wood more useful, right? So you can raise the price. So the value addition has been there, both qualitative and quantitative. Have you get that? Up to this point, everything is clear to all of you. 6 points. Up to 6 points, I have explained to you. Now, if up to this point, if any question from anyone, first you can ask, then I can discuss some more points there. Fine. Then we start with this another point from here. This economic use of forestry product. Again, one of the issue. Economic use. So here the economic use, the one need to understand that controlled use basically, right? Because we all know that the forest or the resource that we are getting is in very limited quantity, right? Forests need more and more time to produce certain product. So that's why we need to have a certain controlled use, right? Or you can say the systematic pattern of use. As let me give you the example on that, and you can easily understand this rotation also. We have certain rotation policy, right? We have a piece of forest. We are dividing the forest into certain compartment or group. People all study that, and then rotation is started. First year, second year, third year. So what is this? This is the one kind of controlled use, right? This is a whole forest land, and we are making certain principles or certain kind of tools or certain restrictions. So this is called controlled use of forestry product should be there. So how the control mechanism has to be there? What kind of control mechanism has to be used? You'll get this kind of answer by studying the concept of forest resource economics, right? So on the basis of economic use, you can decide the rotation. That you already know that I'm not supposed to discuss in detail, right? So after this rotation, if you are following the rotation up to this point, what are the things you're supposed to have? You are able to get the sustainable forest resource, right? It means you are able to draw the product in a sustainable way or in a perpetuity, or for the long term you are able to draw the product from the forest. So now if you have supposed to have that kind of, or you get some surplus amount of forest product, then you can develop this export policy. Export policy means now we can establish a trade relation among some other countries also there, so that you can enhance our economic perspective of the forest resource, right? See, they use whatever the things that we are supposed to get from the forest should not have only the local or regional. We should have a national, or apart from the national, we should have a international aspect there. So how this international trade will take place, right? So for that there are certain rules and regulations need to be derived, isn't it? So after doing all these things from 1 to 7, right, the export policy need to be designed, right, so that the trade of forestry product can be channelized, or can and the things can be transferred easily. Just for example, let me give one thing. I think in the forest law or in the policy, you people study these things. So whenever we are supposed to export or import something, some forest product generally. So there is one certification has to be attached. Certification means that the species is insect free and disease free. Right, these kind of things has to be attached. These are certain policy to then policy depend upon the currency. So lots of policy has to be there. But when you make export policy, if you have the resource or the surplus resource that you can trade internationally, otherwise why you supposed to form the export policy there? Then policy for the basis of distribution is another important thing. Another problem is also there. Again, I start with the same statement. Since for resources are multiple use, so demand is also multiple. So the selection of priority sector is an issue there or the problem. You have to have priority sector selection for the basis of distribution, because now you have to allocate that resource. You have to distribute the resource that you are getting there. Right. So priority sector need to be identified, isn't it? Priority sector where the first go, second, and all. For example, let me forget about this economics for a few seconds. Think about this COVID vaccination. Right. Initially, number of vaccine is very limited. Production is very limited. So, what the distribution policy has been designed? Okay, 60, 65 plus we will get for first the front worker, all the doctors will get. Then after that, 65. Then after that, 45 to 65, and then all the things 18 plus 60 has to be there. So, these are certain policy for the basis of distribution. So here, since the demand of resource is more, isn't it? So we have to decide the priority sector where the demand can be distributed or the resource can be distributed properly, right? Then obviously to analyze people participate is another important aspect is there. People participation, right? See, if you need to channelize the forest product or if you have intention to safeguard the whole forest area, for a forest department, it is very difficult, isn't it? You need a help of local people, and you people already studied again in the forest law and policy. If there is any forest fire, if there is any kind of forest fire, so generally the forest department need the locals to come out to make all this necessary arrangement to resolve the things there. Now the question is there, why people supposed to participate? Isn't it? Whether it is a forest product management or it is a wildlife management is there or the protection of wildlife, why the local people has to be there? Why the people supposed to participate? This is the question, right? Unless or until they have certain kind of economic benefit. So here we need to understand how the resource or the or whatever be the resource that we are getting that can be again allocated or that can be how the license can be given to the local people and all those people or inside the tribal or whatever be the people residing in the fringe area of the forest so that they can willingly participate for the management of forest and the management of wildlife to see unless or until they don't have any kind of economic benefits. So what kind of economic benefits should be given to them, that need to be understand, because economic benefits should encourage them, right? You can't make any kind of benefit that they are not interested. So certain interest that is supposed to benefit them, and people are also attracted to those kind of economic benefit that need to be understand, that need to be studied. Is it clear? And then finally this two things, protection of endangered species, you people all know that, nothing in detail. Now this is forecasting the future requirements. So there are certain models that I have already discussed with you. So we can use that model, right? The models are there. So we can use this model to predict the future, or you can say the forecasting what kind of economic setup will be required in coming years, what kind of demand will be there, what kind of employment generation should be there. So all these kind of issues if in the future should be addressed. So there are certain models, certain principles that will supposed to give you a certain picture so that you can make a proper decision there. So these are certain issues, you can say that a certain area where we can apply the concept of economics. Is it clear to all of you now? Now, if you have any question up to this point, you can ask. Any question? Any question up to this point? Okay. Now we need to understand practical importance. To understand the practical importance of forest economics, right? So one by one, first we have to address the economic problem. What kind of economic problem is there? The economic problem related to the buying, selling, and management of forest land, right? That can be used for either the water resource or we can for the wildlife or some other product. Again, try to understand that the practical importance for this first economics is where we can address these kind of issues. Buying, selling, demand supply channel has to be understand, has to be addressed, has to be resolved. The issue should be understood clearly, and we need to also manage the forest land. Why we need to manage the forest land? So that the water resource or the water supplies can be regulated, or any kind of other indirect product that you are getting that need to be regulated. Wildlife and can be protected, and whatever the product we are getting in a physical form, you can say that extractable product that need to be there. So because of that, we need to manage the forest land there. Right? Now, another economic problem is there, protecting, harvesting, and marketing of forest product. Right? So these are another growing is also, you can say that this is the growing, protecting, harvesting, and marketing. This is another yeah economic problem we have. Growing means what kind of species we have to grow, how many numbers we have to grow, amount, both quality and quantity is good. Then after that, when growing has been decided, then protection is good, because as we all have or know that the forest has a long gestation period. It means a forest needs more time to get mature. So we need all this protection mechanism there, protection from disease, protection from insect, and how to protect the same thing from the changing environmental parameter. After that, harvesting. What should be the harvesting time? At what time we need to harvest it? What stage of forest we need to harvest it? And the important thing is marketing, right? Then how the things has to be reached to the market, how the distribution has to be made, right? And the problem is there, we can have this extractable project can be marketed, but the non-extractable, that is those were important for life, for example oxygen, for the water resource supply, all things, there is no market for that. So how we can market all those things there, right? Then we can apply these things here. Forest land, human and natural resource, that is important. We need to establish the relation between forest land and human and is industrial resource. There is one topic that you have studied in extension, where people and forest has to be discussed. It means we need to understand the dependency of human on the forest, how this livelihood has been dependent on what kind of resource they required for their survival on the human, and industrial, so what kind of raw material, right? How much raw material can be required for the industrial resource. All this lesson also need to mention. Then another important is cost and return. Cost and return. Since we are right, since we are saying several times there is a forest product. See, product, it means some production has to be there, and if production channel has to be made for production, we to incur cost. You can say that that is an investment, right? The cost should be there. Now the question is there, why we are supposed to make an investment, or why we have to incur certain costs unless or until you have to intensify certain to get back certain revenue. So here this forest economics is going to identify and analyze the cost and return from whatever the resource that you are getting from the forest. And whenever you get all this information related to cost and return, then decision making related to harvest or continued growing can be taken. Is it clear? Now, after that, we have said that decision about this harvesting, transport, marketing can be channelized. When all this 4 or 5 steps that has to be there, then you can have this kind of concern how when we have to harvest, what kind of transportation we have or we required, and then the marketing of wood product there. So these are the practical importance. It means we can use all this concept in field itself for resolving all these kind of issues that is available there in the field itself. Is it clear? Now any question from this section? Okay. Now we need to understand this role in forest management. Means how this, what the role of forest management in there. But again, you take you. I hope you are understanding the things properly. Is there any question again? I don't. Any from anyone? Only 2 or 3 ones are replying every time. What were the others? They have understand everything. If they have, it's really very good. So now role. What kind of role in forest resource management of this economics part is there? Right? So now we need to understand that this problem to be adequately appreciated and addressed. Appreciately and address the first the role this is. It means whatever the for problem forestry is facing, that can be properly addressed, or you can say that that can be resolved by studying the forest economics. You can say that, and especially this financial aspect, right? Right, financial aspect. So if you have to take a proper decision, if you need certain decision making tool, so you need to study this forest economics, right? There is the role of that. Then we have deals with economic problems that I've already explained you, several economic problems that I have discussed with you, right? Right, and if you summarize all this economic growth, there is 2 problems that you can say that one is for welfare of society, and the second you can say that revenue generation, isn't it? So how we can manage that? That through the forest, how we can serve both the things by revenue. If you are supposed to be interested in revenue generation, your work should not be a welfare, right? If you're going to lose your revenue, then you're supposed to have a welfare. So how the balanced approach can be there, that also need to understand, right? And this is last, that the problem involved in management of forests consists of a mixture of stands of several ages and species. So you will easily understand these things, right? So here also forest economics come into the picture, because this forest economics is providing certain kind of principle or certain practices, right? So that you can understand the problem involved in buying, selling, taxes, if there is any kind of taxation is there, or how to manage the forest land, and whether all this forest resource can be used for production of water, wildlife, you are you are imagining forest just for growing, protecting, harvesting, marketing, all these things to be understand there, right? And on the basis of all those things, you can make a decision, or you can determine what is the best way of scheduling the harvesting, so that the proper or optimal culture operation can be utilized. So here is the role of forest economics in the forest resource management. right? So I hope people will get this concept here. Is there any question, you can ask immediately. Is there any question? Fine. So there is again a third more question. So now we'll show the relevance of economic theory and forest resource management. So, as you all know that what is forest resource management? Basically, forest resource management is the integration of all this, the social or the economical or the biological factor that is going to affect the decision, the management decision. So these are the integration, right? Again, try to understand the forest resource management that you can already study it during your UG courses. What is it? So basically, it is obviously integration of the social economic aspect and also the biological aspect. Why we have to understand this aspect there? Because all these aspect is going to affect your management decision, right? So when we have to take a decision and the resource is limited, so economic theory comes into the picture. So we can clearly relate the economic theory directly with the forest management. So these are the certain points that has been written on this slide, where we have to adopt the economic theory for managing the forest there. So again, I like to discuss. I hope the slide is clear to all of your screen, because there are a number of points, more number of points are there. So, okay. So let me explain you all these points. So first, choice between alternative course of action. Choices between alternative course of action. Right. It means if you are have a limited resource and you are making a decision, so you have to also understand the what I'm saying. You also understand the consequence, right? So choice with alternative course of action, you need to understand it. Well, let me give you a very simple example there. For example, you have to set up a sawmill. Just take example. Since we are drawing the forest resource, so now we have to set up a sawmill there. So whatever the location you are selecting, right? What is the location? So the location will decide how much profit you will get and what kind of employment opportunity you are able to generate. Let me elaborate it properly. For example, your sawmill is near the forest area, right? So obviously your transportation cost and some other costs has to be reduced, isn't it? So there will be chances that your profitability may be raised, but nearby forest there is chances that you will get uh, non-skilled labor more rather than skilled labor, isn't it? So since these are the decisions you have to take, whether just a simple decision that you have to set up a sawmill, so where the sawmill has to be set, because this the location, whatever the location you are selecting, right, that is going to decide your revenue generation and the level of employment you have. What is the basic local employment I'm talking about here. Have you get that? And then here one more thing that you have to understand there, whatever be the alternative you are selecting, that should be most useful and least costly. This is another important aspect that you have to understand here. Again, listen carefully. There should be what I'm saying. There should be least cost, and there should have a more useful for yourself, right? So, and on the if the things will be there, if you are able to get this kind of decision, then you are able to maximize your production value, right? Because cost and return need to be understand here. So that's why I explained to choice between alternative course of action. So whenever you are taking any decision, you can For the same resource, you have a different kind of decision making is there. So whenever you have select one decision, right? So that decision should be useful and least costly. If you are able to achieve this kind of balance, then you are able to maximize uh, your production value. Is it clear? Right? And then next you have the evaluation method of use of scarce resource while managing a forest. Another thing that as a forest student or as a forest graduate or postgraduate, you should understand that how to use the resource, right? You have managed the forest, you have a forest area, right? And in the forest a different kind of species is there, so you have to locate all those resources which is scarce in nature, right? Or if it is scarce means the quantity is very less. If it is less in nature, right, so it can consume in a very short period of time. So while you are managing the forest, you should keep these things also your mind, how to use the scarce resource, the resource that is very less in quantity there, right? Then valuation method. Valuation is another important thing. How to value the things, whether it is a wood, water, or wildlife, or recreation. What kind of the activity that is going on in the forest area, right? How we value that? Because see, if you have a timber, we have a market. We can value it. But if you have a recreation is there is no marketplace where you can sell it, isn't it? So how the valuation method should be there? As I remember you in the very first semester, I have already discussed with all this kind of valuation method, isn't it? I have discussed with this hedonic, I have discussed with this willingness to pay, I have discussed with you willingness to accept the different kind of valuation method. I've already explained to you. So here we have to make this kind of decision. What kind of valuation method you need to approach to define the value of the resource that you are getting. Is resource maybe wood, resource maybe water, resource maybe wildlife, resource maybe recreation, right? So after that, non-market valuation of forest product is also required. So how the non-market value? So we have to make comparison. You have to create a certain kind of situation. Let me give you a simple example. In the hills, just take example of hills. We have a hill. People of village are getting the water resource from through the springs or some small channels that has to be flown there. They are getting free of cost. Now they are not supposed to use any kind of mechanization process to get the water, because there is a slope. So because of the gravity, water has to come through that. Right? And people has to draw the water. Second thing is that the water is purified. So again, no cost has to be incurred to purify the things, isn't it? Right? And but people are putting no value for that. People are not supposed to pay anything. So no value has to be put there. Now we just make a comparison. For example, we are getting the same amount of water. Just take example 1 liter. In 1 liter, in hilly area, well purified, without any mechanization, water has been drawn. Now for this, compare it this town area or where this plain area where you are getting one bottle of mineral water. It was totally purified. How much cost it should pay? 20 rupees, 30 rupees. And even in this, if you are buying the same piece of bottle of water in airport, how much you are paying? 100 rupees, isn't it? So now we can compare. So this is some non-market valuation. Despite the water from spring has no market, but we can compare. If by any means we are losing that water of spring, it means we have to incur that much cost to get that amount of water. So if you are going to lose 1 liter of water from spring, it means I have to pay 20, 30 and up to 100 rupees for getting the same amount of water of same quality, right? So these are some non-market value. So this through the only the comparison we can have a non-market valuation. Just take example of nowadays oxygen, isn't it? Lots of memes and everything has been created when there is a shortage of oxygen supply. Okay, you are now filling the trees, now there is less oxygen, now people are running here and there to buy the oxygen cylinder, right? If you have the appropriate or number of trees or the amount of forest that is required there, do you think we need extra oxygen to generate? Now people are buying this oxygen cylinder. It means that much of amount of oxygen cylinder we are getting free of cost, which we are not supposed to put any value, because the oxygen that we are getting from the tree has no market. But now you can easily understand the value of oxygen. So these are some very relevant and current example of this non-market valuation there. Is it clear to all of you now? Fine. So I like to conclude here, because then I'll discuss some more concept in the next session here, right? Otherwise, it is very